Okay. So prepare. This is going to be a little introduction to the organization itself, to the institution of parole, and to what your role would be as a parole advocate. So we're trying to empower people to make their best case for parole. And we're doing that by providing information and materials and support. This has grown out of the work of Mary Joel, who's on the call with us, and she has founded Alternative Directions, I think beginning in 1979, and then Second Chance for Women, which entailed parole support, but all kinds of other support as well, reentry, you name it, and anything basically that Mary Joel can assist the women with in terms of helping them to move towards getting out and be successful. She is answering those letters. And so her work in Prepare continues to have that very broad remit, whilst what Jackie and I and Teresa are doing is sort of drilling right down on the parole and trying to figure out best practice for helping people put together their best case for parole. We launched in June of 2021. It was, you could call it a relaunch of Second Chance for Women and a rename, which had been happening for over a decade prior to that. And we just incorporated in December 2021. So we are in the process of getting our own 501c3. At the moment, we have a fiscal sponsor. That's how we are able to accept donations. That was the relaunch party. That's in the Marion House, which is transitional housing for women in Baltimore. And you can see the guy in the back who's got kind of the gold jacket on. That's David Blumberg, the chair of the Maryland Parole Commission. And next to him is Lisa Vonch, who's another of the 10 commissioners, and Mary Joel and myself. And then a couple of men, but mostly women who've been helped by Second Chance for Women over the years. So the idea is to develop a curriculum and bring it into the prisons, beginning and focusing very much on the women's prison. We're going to try and get it right there and then be able to scale from that point and connect train volunteer advocates and connect them with those seeking support, and then oversee and support that relationship between the pair as they move forward. I'm going to just be very specific about what parole is. It's the early but conditional release of a person from prison. It's a discretionary grant. It's not something that people are entitled to legally by any means. In Maryland, most sentences from 6 months upwards attract the opportunity to go before the parole hearing, but there's no right to parole. That's relevant in the sense that it's not like a legal hearing. You won't get the same whole range of due process with it. It's a much more informal, subjective decision-making process. And in fact, the hearing itself, the person goes to on their own. Even if they hired an attorney, the attorney couldn't go with them. So you as the parole advocate won't go to the hearing, but you will have an opportunity, and I'll talk a bit more about that in a bit, to do some advocacy directly to the Parole Commission yourself on their behalf. When I started in 2019, when I started working with Mary Joel on parole, she and I had worked years before together on the college program that's in MCIW. It's now run by Goucher College from Baltimore, but it used to be just a small nonprofit, and we're both on the board together. And then Mary Joel invited me in 2019 to do the parole with her. And it's been a bit of a wild ride and has snowballed. But I began to try to figure out the different facets of parole. There'll be an opportunity if you want to learn more about this. I'm not going to go into great detail here. Safe to say, very briefly, I'll talk about the history in a minute. But philosophy, what we're talking about is, what are we trying to do with people when we lock them up? Is this just about retribution, or are we actually trying to help people to move forward and plan for a better future? There's the political side to it. Recently, the governor was taken out of parole for lifers. That was something that was long overdue, but there's a whole politics to parole in every state, really. Law, it overlaps with people's legal routes, to the appeal routes and that kind of thing, to try and get out of prison, but it is its own thing. And as I said, it's not like a trial, it's not like an appeal. And that opens the door for us to use people who aren't lawyers but who have other backgrounds, whether you all have various different backgrounds that would serve very well in this role of parole advocate. Storytelling. Parole is an opportunity to bring not just the moment in time that the crime happened, but the whole of a person's story, both their past, their present, and their future plans before the parole commission. But that requires some storytelling capacity and writing skills, and parole advocates can help with that. Re-entry, I like to repeat this mantra that to prepare well for re-entry is to prepare well for a parole hearing, because one of the things that the parole commission is looking at is those future plans, the home plan, the employment plan, and the support network that will be around someone. Agency, by which I mean the ability to plan for the future and move forward. That's something that being incarcerated, we know research shows, sort of that deteriorates people's agency because they aren't able to make their own decisions. And so one of our hypotheses is that this program and the support of a parole advocate will help people in reestablishing that sense of agency. And finally, forgiveness, because as I'm going to explain a bit when we look at the history, parole is about saying the past is the past, and you have done your time in prison, and we're now going to focus on moving forward. And without, if our society is forever backward looking and can never move on from past wrongs, then it's not obvious how parole can sit well within that kind of a culture. So the history, this guy is known as the father of parole. He was a British naval officer, and he was the warden of a small penal colony in Australia on an island. And he was way ahead of his time in his thinking. It's funny that he's Victorian, because the Victorians are thought of as being particularly harsh when it comes to punishment, and they were. But he came up with this idea of a mark system. It's known as the mark system, and it's considered to be the precursor to parole. And essentially the idea that a person secures their own release by their own moral endeavor. He was driven by his belief in the dignity of humans, and particularly the dignity that should be accorded to people who are incarcerated. And he himself was a prisoner of war, so was always very focused on the human beings that are locked up, and that demands a recognition that they're equal in worth and dignity, whether locked up or not locked up. And his other big insight was that to fixate on crushing people, on punishing them, is inconsistent with also at the same time wanting people to emerge from this experience renewed and refreshed and ready to go in the world. And he felt that a lot of failure in the criminal justice system was an attempt to both crush people down and punish them and rehabilitate them at the same time. So what he proposed was the start of a sentence would be backward looking, and that would be the sort of retribution side of it, and it would be short and sharp, and then it's done. And thereafter, everything is forward looking. And this idea has been sort of foundational throughout, the English speaking legal world. It spread, he took it back to England with him. And then from there, it spread, it went to Ireland, it went to New York first, was where it went in America. But yeah, so he's known as the father of parole today. But if you look at parole as it's instantiated in Maryland, and I don't know a ton about other states in the detail that I know Maryland, but we don't embody the spirit of what he was trying to do. Because we still haven't disentangled that retribution from rehabilitation. And if you listen to any kind of discussion about criminal justice in general, I think you can pick up on that conflict, that unresolved conflict of people should be made miserable while they're locked up, and they should also come out and be ready to go in the world. And it's just unrealistic. And McConaughey said that a long time ago. It's also the case that the way the regulations are written in Maryland is that the Parole Commission in Maryland has a broad range of factors they can look at, a very wide discretion, quite a subjective discretion as well. And they can look backwards as well as looking forward. So you could go before have a parole hearing where you've got commissioners who are very much focused on, oh, you completed your GED, you're now in the Goucher College program, you have a good home plan ahead of you. Or they could say, let's talk about the crime. And it depends on the parole commissioner, but the legal framework sets it up that it is both past looking as well as future looking. And a lot of people who go to parole hearings say that they feel like they were on trial again, that it was almost like a resentencing. And part of what I think our argument with our organization is to say, and maybe one day this will go to some changes in the law, hopefully, that look, if you look at the history and the philosophy of parole, it's not backward looking, it's forward looking, and it should be, and that's how it should be instantiated in our law here. The pandemic has meant that the opportunities which were there for people to move forward and do good programming and that kind of thing have been really affected by that, unfortunately. There's been much more limited programming. We ourselves, Mary Joel and I were going in person prior to March 2020, but obviously it's been almost 2 years since we've had any kind of face-to-face work with clients. So that's been a big change. And I think it's made it even harder for people to have positive experiences that set themselves up well for the future there. Okay, so the solution we are proposing is let's get this curriculum, both the offline portion that goes into the prison and the online portion that can be accessed by parole advocates. Let's keep developing that and refining it and train the engaged citizens, because that's how you scale. It's really difficult to pay enough people to do this work. There's no public defender money for it. People can hire an attorney, but an attorney is not necessarily the right person for the job because it's not like a legal appeal. A social worker may actually be a better option for being a parole advocate than a lawyer in some circumstances. And then pair people with parole advocates and help manage that relationship and support their relationship. So one of the things that you would do as parole advocate is help develop the parole packet, and that's a binder and it sets out a person's best case for parole. Unlike the file that's going to be in front of the commissioners that's come from the institution, it's an opportunity for it to be written from the perspective of the person themselves. There's no requirement to do it. And a lot of people say they didn't know that it was even a possibility to do it. So we're trying to sort of come up with a good standard format for parole packets. This is the broad structure that we're using. And we will help you with this and we'll give you lots of resources for developing this. The three meaty parts of it is the life story, the remorse statement, and the re-entry plan. The life story and the remorse statement are both kind of real writing projects. And the re-entry plan involves more kind of outreach work of helping people find transitional housing, if that's the right thing. If their history is substance abuse, then maybe you help them find the right substance abuse programming for the outside. So that's the parole packet, but that's not the only part of the role of a parole advocate. It'll also engage the person's family and friends in the preparation process, because there's an opportunity for them too to advocate to the parole commission. And then there's also an opportunity for them to help develop that parole packet. So for example, if a family member is providing the home plan, then what you really want in the parole packet is a letter from that person, what the address is, what the home is, have they got room for the person, maybe a photograph of the home. So that it's giving substance to that claim. Oh yes, I'm going to go and live with my sister. Well, there's the letter from sister and there's kind of the background to show that this is a solid home plan. And then you will advocate both in writing and in orally to the parole commission on the person's behalf. So the writing part will be a cover letter from you, and we'll help you with it as well. That will go with the parole packet, and it will look at the statutory factors that the parole commission considers. Also look at what's in the parole packet and really pull out those key arguments for that particular person's case for parole. So that part is probably as close to the role of a lawyer that gets, and we'll give you support with that. And then you get half an hour with one of Maryland's 10 parole commissioners to speak on the person's behalf. And that's the time when family members can also attend. So you will coordinate that call and help guide the family members in being part of that. The person going up for parole won't be on that call, because they will go to their hearing, which no one else is allowed to attend, but you will get half an hour time. They've been conference calls since the pandemic. I think the option of going back to an in-person has now happened, but the conference calls have stayed as well, and that's sort of the easier way to do it. So who puts together a parole packet? It's not your parole packet, it's the person who's going up for parole, but you can do a lot in terms of being editor, helping with writing.
Just give her a minute.
Sorry.
That's okay, Liz, you're back on.
How much did you guys miss of that?
Oh, a sentence, Liz. Back to
This one?
yes, perfect. Just start that one, Liz.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so sorry. I've been having these. I thought this was internet issue was fixed, and it's not. So you're going to help with typing, writing, putting it together, getting the hard copy together, making a PDF version. We will help with all of this. You're not going to be just kind of left to it. And you being able to use the internet and the phone in the way that the person who's incarcerated can't, you can help develop that re-entry plan. Why you want to put this parole packet together is because parole looks at a much, much bigger picture than the trial. The trial is generally a snapshot in time, whereas parole can look at, the commissioners are looking at so many different things. And so you want to pull that story together and frame that case for parole as best you can in as compelling a way as possible. Our organization is defining success by 4 measures. Teresa talked about the organization she works for, Choice Research Associates. There's a group of criminologists, and we've been working with them to ensure that we are set up to define success and be able to measure success, because we know that if this is going to get funded to actually be sustainable, we have to be able to demonstrate the impact. 4 measures: positive outcomes at parole hearings. The second one is recidivism. So you might work with someone and they might get refused parole, but that's not necessarily a bad outcome. Well, it is a bad outcome for them in terms of their parole, but we think that this kind of support that you will have given may show up in the data as making people less likely to return to prison, because you've engaged the family, you've helped with a re-entry plan, you've maybe helped develop that sense of agency. The sense of agency is, like I said, that moving forward in the world. And then the 4th measure, and this goes to Mary Joel's decades worth of work, is just to measure a person's belief that others care, whether or not they get out. And that 3rd and 4th measure are going to be achieved through pre and post surveys that our criminologists have developed for us. And that's how we'll measure those. The other 2 are just objective outcome measures. I think this is bold and innovative because we're trying to shift the paradigm in terms of when preparation for re-entry begins. DPSCS, which runs the prisons, has its own re-entry specialists, but they kick in about 120 days before release. Our timetable is way, way to the left of that, because we want people to come to us about 1 to 3 years before their first parole hearing. So it's also that we're using an engaged citizenry to get the job done, and we're trying to use technology to make this as effective and smooth as possible. Opportunity to collaborate is to be a parole advocate, basically. The resources that you'll have available, we do have this book that Mary Joel and I kind of began working on this before the pandemic with support from the ABLE Foundation. And it's on Amazon, but we can send you a copy if you would like us to send you a copy. We have some YouTube videos that I sort of built. They take little aspects of the process and just make short videos that break it down into different pieces. And the big one is going to be, or the big 2 is going to be the ongoing support from the Prepare staff and the Prepare curriculum, which we'll talk about in a minute. A couple of points just to mention about being a parole advocate. Communication wise, you will use mail, phone call, and we're moving towards video call as well. That's something that's covered in the MOU that we're concluding with DPSCS. We have a lockbox in the prison that we're picking up once a week. So if you get any mail, it will get scanned and put on your client's electronic file. You won't use your home address. You'll use our address, our postbox address, and the person could use the mail if they didn't want to use the lockbox. And you can also have phone calls. It's not really, you can't really do a phone call every day or every week because you're reliant on the case manager, the prison case manager, to bring the person to their office and sort that. You're putting a little burden on them to get the phone call. And while it is important to at least do a couple of phone calls, you don't want to sort of, you won't do a lot of those. That's sort of to fill in the gaps of what isn't covered by the snail mail route. Time commitment, I'm telling people to allow about 1 hour a week, but honestly, there'll be weeks when you wouldn't have things on. And yet, when it comes to the crunch of your advocacy meeting and completing the packet, you're going to have more than 1 hour a week. So it's not an evenly distributed thing. The duration depends on how early you're assigned to the person before their parole hearing. But at the moment, I'm just saying 6 months to 2 years. Okay. Can everyone still hear me?
Liz, are you back on? Great.
Oh yeah, can everyone still hear me?
But we can hear you now.
Okay, I'm gonna show one more thing and then take any questions. Sorry. What I want to show you is a case file. So if you took a case, then you would get the electronic file. And I'll show you what that would look like and also what the curriculum would look like. Okay, so this is pretend person here, so it's not filled in, but this would be your electronic file and you could add to it and we'll add to it. If any correspondence comes in, we'll scan it and it'll go here in correspondence. And you'll gather from the person. You might do different back and forths and drafts of the life story. So you'll keep those there, or the remorse statement or the reentry plan. And one of the important documents is obviously the activity log, which will kind of set out what each person is doing and when they're doing it by, and it will help you have more of a timeline of what has to happen when, and that's going to depend on how quickly from your assignment that the person's hearing is. So we can talk about that if any of you want assignments within a particular time frame. But you're also going to have a workbook here. This is a document that we've sent to, or we send to people as and when they join the program, and it's asking a lot of background, and it's trying to just get as much information for you without having to do a million phone calls or a million letters back and forth to gather it in bits and bobs. So before you even get the case, there should be quite a lot in the workbook that you can go through. So educational stuff, they'll tell you about who the family members are that they would like you to contact. And the first part is actually icebreakers, and you'll do icebreakers as well to send to them, like, what's your food nightmare? Just various things that I think it's because information wise, you'll end up with a whole lot more information about them than they will about you. So we thought about this icebreaker idea just to sort of get to know a little bit about each other, and people can just answer whatever they're comfortable with. So that is, that would be the electronic file. And the other thing that's on, this is all on Google Drive at the moment, although we will eventually have our own database that covers this stuff. The other thing that you'll access is the curriculum. And it's going to be broken down into 6 stages, and I'm trying to keep it bite-sized and manageable. And so when you first get your case, you'll do part A of the curriculum. And each part is going to have a to-do list, and it's going to have guidance and templates. So here's your to-do list, for example. I think I already had that one up. In part A, you're going to participate in a case assignment meeting, familiarize yourself with the client's file, read the guidance, look at the templates, complete the icebreaker exercise, write to your client, contact family members. But for this to-do list, everything that is that you need should be either in the guidance or in the templates. So, for example, to write your letter to your client, you can pull up this template, and you don't have to use it, but we want to make it as easy as possible for you to know what to put in the letter, and you can just tailor that. And then when you've made your letter, you'll put a copy of your letter in your client's own electronic file, and you'll check off the activity log that you've done it. So that's the main part of how you will guide yourself through the process. In addition, if you want the book, we can send you the book, or you can get the book, the YouTube videos. And the key part is we will work with you. We're not going to just sort of give you a case and say, have fun. We do one-on-one Zooms as and when people need them. And then we try and do group Zooms as well, where a bunch of parole advocates come together and just talk about how things are going. So that is everything that I have to share. Are there any questions from anybody?
Do you currently have any, I guess, clients, if you will, and are you currently working on this? And at the initial stage, how many do you think you could handle now? And as you work up, is there a, amount of inmates that you could cover?
Yeah, so we have clients who have target hearing dates. So it's not 10 years in the future. Let's say target hearing dates in 2022 or 2023. We have about 40 of those at the moment, but I just picked up 4 letters from the mailbox last night. So that could be 44. It's got a bit of a momentum to it. But when someone writes to us from the prison, the first thing we do is verify with the Parole Commission, are they actually going up for parole? Because sometimes people will write and they'll unfortunately be years off the time that they get a parole hearing. Our aim is to begin with MCIW and cover everyone who wants parole support there. We've been told by the Parole Commission that would be about 120 parole hearings a year. But some of those cases, occasionally people will have a private attorney. I know the University of Maryland does some of those, but we still need to ramp up. And so we have current clients. We have our first cohort of volunteers started last summer, and they really, really were the guinea pigs. And the first couple of them are just coming up to the point that they're finalizing their parole packets, and they have their conference calls with parole commissioners scheduled for February and March. And that's worked out pretty well, I think. Everyone that's kind of come to the program at this early stage, I feel has been bringing some other angle, that they've enriched it and taught us something and helped us from that feedback go back and refine and refine and refine. But so we do have quite a lot of women in MCIW with target hearing dates. Some of those were second chance for women clients that just rolled over into prepare, and their target hearing dates happen to be coming up in the next few years. We then have a whole list of second chance women clients who will have parole hearings years out from now, but we just keep them on a list and check in with them as and when. And the idea is not to cherry pick. If someone wants support, that they can join the program.
Seems straightforward, or as straightforward as you could make it for us. I wondered how folks who are incarcerated are learning about the program. Sounds like you're getting a lot of letters, but how are you sort of educating folks that the support is available?
Jackie, do you want to do that one?
So first of all, we have quite a large percentage. We're working with those ladies, and some ladies continue to reach out to Mary Jo sort of on a bilateral way with a letter. Sometimes Mary Jo then finds they have a parole issue, so she will refer them over to us. So we have a sort of cross referral between Elizabeth and myself with the parole side, Mary Joel with sort of the broader issues they might be facing. So we have a cross-referral process. Word of mouth is very effective in MCIW. So sometimes we'll be helping one woman. She'll maybe talk about what we're doing together, and then someone else will just on a cold contact will write to us, sometimes already with a lot of material already ready. So we'll find that in our PO box. We have a lockbox, as Elizabeth said, so that women don't have to get postage to post their materials to us. So we have a lockbox as they enter the cafeteria in MCIW, which has a big sign on it that says prepare, and we have information on notice boards around MCIW. So that might catch their eye, the notices and the lockbox. So it's sort of a little bit of advertising in the prison. And other ways, we as a sort of a midterm project, we'd like to put together a flyer or a brochure which someone will get on their very first day of incarceration. We'd like to sort of prepare people so that they can begin their incarceration with a very forward-looking mindset, which will not only sort of help on a very dark day, but also help them structure their time in prison to the very best of their ability, so they can start with the programming, do their best to stay infraction-free, so that they can be in the best position when they come up for parole that they can be. So that we haven't done that brochure or that flyer yet, but that's a sort of a midterm goal for us to have. So that will be something that they see from day one, prepare our contact details and what they can do before it comes time for them to become involved in our program. Liz, I'm trying to think if there are any other ways.
Just to add that the MOU that isn't signed yet, but is very much almost there, is going to have informational sessions, hopefully in person, but that's, you know, depending on the restrictions of the pandemic ending. But that once a quarter, DPSCS would supply us with the names of everyone who's got parole hearings in the relevant time frame. So we could scoop up everyone and make sure that they at least know about the program in a timely manner, and then they can make a decision whether they want to apply. Because we do have quite a few people who will just come to us last minute, and we give out materials and information, but it's too late to have like a advocate assigned and go through the whole process.
Do you, as Mr. Cohen, do you work through case management at all? I think I discussed your program and it seemed like they were at least familiar with it. Additionally, as I said, the library is happy to spread the word and disseminate any information that you need to the population. And as you say, word of mouth is, you know, is very robust there, and it's a great way to share information.
Yeah, so we do work with case management. They have been the ones during the pandemic that have actually made this able to keep going, because that's how we've gotten the phone calls. And as much as a lot can be done by mail, sometimes you just get to the point where I just need to talk to this person on the phone to fill in gaps. So when we assign a case, we email that person's case manager, and we copy in the parole advocate. So the case manager and the parole advocate now have each other's names. Like you said, case management knows about our program, and I hope thinks well of it. And then the parole advocate can themselves email the case manager to arrange a phone call at mutually convenient time as and when they need it. As regards the library, yeah, I'm really pleased to be sitting down with you next week, because I think we need to sort of brainstorm a bit about how we can make this logistically easier than it currently is. And the library is an obvious place for some of this work to get done, I think. Any other questions? Emily
Yaffe here. If you hear groaning in the background, I'm sorry, that's my French bulldog asleep next to me. This sounded great. Maybe you're going to tell next steps, but what if we wanted to go forward? What are the next steps?
The next step would be to email us and say that you would be interested in taking a case based on what you've learned today, you have been put off, and we would organize a one-on-one Zoom and assign the case and spend a bit of time looking together at the person's file and talking about what your first task list would be on that. And then that would be it, really. Anyone else? Pam.
This has been really great. Thank you very much. And I might have missed this before, but when you were talking about the templates and all the resources that you have online, did you say that we would upload them onto the Google Drive and then you all are responsible for sending them, or do we send them somehow through that system? How does that work?
If you're mailing a letter, you would just mail it in your regular mail. You wouldn't use your home address. You would use our PO box as your return address. Yeah, so I should have said that actually. I guess there's some small expenses entailed in being a parole advocate. And one of the things we're looking at going forward is if people wanted stipends for it, we can do that. But yes, you would mail it in the regular way, and there'll be a document up there giving you make sure you've got the DOC number on it. Don't send a greeting card. You're not allowed to send a kind of cardboard and things like that. So there'll be some guidance up on that.
Great, thank you.
And then when it's the case, isn't it, when the mail comes into us at our PO box or our drop box in MCIW, we'll scan it and then we'll let you know, oh, it's up on the Google Drive ready for you in your case folder.
Yeah, I think we had hoped when I started trying to plot this out that we might be by this point in time doing in-person, like once a month you go and meet in person, and it just seems so far off. And as time's gone on, I've just drilled down on that remote model, because there is power in the remote model, because it just makes it easier for parole advocates to do the work. And but you know, maybe at some point we'll get back to that idea of people meeting in person. I don't know if any of you ever saw, back in 2019, there was a long article in the New Yorker about the New York program, Parole Advocacy Preparation Project, or Parole Preparation Project, I think it's called. And that was people meeting, a lot of meeting in person. So that's somewhat, that's one of the models that we looked at when thinking, hey, how can we do this using volunteers? Because I know that there's just a limit to how many, if you wanted to cover everyone in the women's prison, you'd have to have quite a number of staff members just doing parole advocacy. So the idea is to try to use volunteers to make that scale possible, but also it's a way of engaging citizens in helping people on getting out of prison and staying out of prison. I mean, people are incarcerated on behalf of all of us. So I think there is that sort of responsibility to get involved in any way we can. And maybe our program just opens the door to lots of people to get involved in this kind of work in a way that would be hard to do without a program to facilitate it. Any other questions? Well, feel free to email us with any follow-up questions. If you're not sure, that's fine. We can talk further, or we can just organize an individual Zoom session and talk about a case and what your timing is and that kind of thing. And definitely, Hananya, we'll talk next week about the library, or we'll schedule something to talk about the library and how we can weave that in. Do you think you'll get back in anytime soon?
So not full time. I'm actually going in on next Wednesday. We're getting new furniture and I have to go in and move things around.
Right.
But no, we haven't gotten any word.
Right.
The cases are really high in the prisons right now. I don't know if you know, there's a dashboard where you could see actually, take it with a grain of salt, but you could see a general idea of what the cases are currently in the prisons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Elizabeth, I'd like to set up just a brief time to meet with you, because I want to see what I can do to support this effort. I don't know that I could take any cases because I don't know what that conflict may look like. But I mean, this is really important work, and I want to support this in any way that I can, small way that I can.
Thank you. Please just send me an email and we'll set that up, because what you guys are doing with the public defenders on the social work side, just as you can see, it just overlaps completely with the re-entry plan piece of what we're doing. And
Right.
you've way more expertise than we have at building those plans. So
Okay, thank you.
Perfect. All right, Jackie, did you want to say a final word?
No, just thank you very much. And hopefully we'll hear back from you if you sort of feel that it's a good fit for you.
Yeah, thank you all for reaching out. Actually, we did try reaching out before a while back, and to some people, and it felt like there might not be that much interest in parole advocacy, but then suddenly we thought, no, actually there's a few people that want to know what's going on. So we're sort of trying to think how we're going to manage the supply and demand once the word gets out more in the prison. So we're very happy to have you all interested in the program.
Can I just add one more comment in that I actually think that there may be more interest in this than you think. Like I was really interested in it, and I really searched around on the internet to find a group like you all, and it wasn't easy. Like there's just not much out there, and I think that there's a fair amount of interest in the community to get involved in things like this. And I don't know if there's any way to increase your visibility in some way, but I think folks would really be interested in you know, especially if this is something that they can do remotely. I think that there'd be a lot of interest.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing, our communications, we got strong backgrounds in law and things like that, and we're not communication. We have no social media presence at all at the moment. Partly that's because we couldn't really run before we could walk. So at the moment, we've been trying to solve that question of, well, what would the curriculum look like? Because what templates would the people need? What guidance do they need? So it's been a work in progress, but as our numbers ramp up, then our volunteers need to ramp up, and we need to match those things. So yeah, if you have any thoughts of
That's a good point.
anyone else who might be interested, please feel free to let us know, or let them know to let us know.
That's a good point. Elizabeth, if you don't mind, I am adjunct faculty at Morgan, and I would like to share this with the deans of the School of Social Work.
Oh, wow, that would be
If there's
fantastic.
anyone there that maybe some of the faculty would be interested in doing this also.
That would be wonderful. And, you know, for the students, it would be a really great learning experience as well. And they might not get credit for it, but it would be really important learning experience, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good idea. All right, I'm going to forward your information to the deans out there.
Thank you so much, Terry. Thank you. All right, well, it was very nice to meet you all via Zoom, and please just get in contact with myself and Jackie. And so I think you all have the Prepare Parole Gmail address, which is the kind of main one that we're using at the moment, or some of you may be on my own Gmail address. Either way works. We'll see it. We see it every day.
Thank you for the important work you're doing. I mean, the inmates in prison are by themselves and often don't know how to prepare the packets or have any of the information that you're providing. So it's wonderful that there's a group outside interested in helping them.
Right. Well, it's about getting people out as soon as possible on the trajectory of their own sentence, as prepared as possible. And I'm not sure who could disagree with that as a goal. I mean, I'm sure maybe there are people who would disagree with it, but I think everyone's got an interest in people leaving prison well prepared. So yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks very much.